What is the fastest way to make your tomato plants bear heavy? Pour on more organic fertilizer. Water them day after day, month after month, or stay out in the garden tending them almost all day. If that is your first answer, I would wager you are making at least a few very common mistakes, and they are costing you a whole lot of tomatoes. This past season, I harvested about 30 pounds of fruit from each plant. They were all very good quality, juicy, soft, fragrant, tasty, and enough to make you not want to go back to those bland tomatoes from the store anymore. And you can do the same, but before you add anything at all to your plants, I want you to check yourself for these mistakes first, because just one small mistake can kill your tomato plant right away. Today I will show you the 5 simplest but most damaging mistakes when growing tomatoes. Watch until the end of the video, especially mistake number 3, because I have seen it ruin a whole garden bed in just one season, while the grower still had no idea where he had gone wrong. Tomatoes and the truths you may not know. If you are dreaming of biting into a perfect summer tomato grown right in your own garden, then you have come to the right place. I have grown tomatoes for more than 30 years. Every summer there are usually at least 5 different varieties in my home garden. Surely you have heard many folks say tomatoes are easy to grow. That is not altogether wrong. Tomatoes truly are one of the first plants many families choose when they want to grow their own food. And what I have learned after all those seasons is this: many tomato plants do not fail because they are neglected. They fail because they are cared for the wrong way over and over. I have seen many folks tend their tomatoes very carefully and still end up disappointed. Not because they are lazy. Many times they even tend them too much. They visit the plants in the morning, then water again in the evening. They see yellow leaves, so they add more fertilizer. They see the plant getting thick, so they cut it. They see the bottom of the fruit turning black, so they hurry to look for more calcium. And then the result is that you have giant tomato plants, a great many leaves, and hardly any fruit. And most often they blame themselves. They think they do not have a hand for growing things. The good news is that most of those mistakes can be fixed. You do not need to turn your garden into a laboratory, and you do not need to buy one new thing for every little problem. Now let us start with the mistake that costs folks their crop more than almost anything else. And it is the mistake that sounds the plainest. It sounds almost too plain to be the guilty thing, but it surely is. You see the weather starting to warm up. The store already has fresh green young tomato plants. The neighbor is starting to clean up his beds too. So the first thing that comes into your mind is, if I plant earlier, I suppose I will get to pick tomatoes earlier. It sounds sensible, but with tomatoes earlier is not always faster. A tomato is a warm season plant. It needs warm soil, warm nights, and weather steady enough for the plant to go into the garden without being set back right from the start. So when should you plant tomatoes? Maybe you have heard this already. Tomatoes should be planted outside after the last frost has passed. Whether you start seeds indoors yourself or buy seedlings at a garden center, your area's average last frost date is still a very good starting point. But the trouble is the word average. The real last frost date can come a few weeks earlier or a few weeks later than that number. So when that date gets close, I do not only ask, is the frost over? I also ask, is my garden truly ready for tomatoes to go into the ground? The first thing I do is wait at least until the average last frost date has passed. I have met late cold too many times, so I don't care to gamble with young tomato plants. But even when that date has passed, I still do not rush to plant right away. I look at the weather forecast for the next 10 days. What I watch most closely is whether the nighttime temperature stays steadily above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. If the forecast still has nights of 43, 44 degrees Fahrenheit, the garden itself may very well drop close to 40 degrees or lower, and frost can still show up when the temperature is in the 36 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit range. Besides the danger of frost, tomatoes also do not care for cold nights in the 40-degree Fahrenheit range. The plant may not die, but it will slow down, stand still, and not grow strong. If I can wait until the nights are steady in the 50-degree Fahrenheit range, the plant will take hold much better. The next thing is soil temperature. For a tomato seedling, the soil must be warm enough for the roots to spread and grow. I like the soil to reach about 60 degrees Fahrenheit or more. Close to 60 can still be planted, but if the soil is 60 or above, the plant will be stronger and get a better start. Before we go on, leave your state down in the comments. That way I will know what climate you are growing tomatoes in, and later advice will fit your garden more closely. This is a mistake a great many folks make, and many do not even know they must do it this early, putting up support for tomatoes. When tomatoes begin to carry fruit, the weight grows very fast. Many indeterminate varieties surely need support, but even many determinate varieties still need a stake cage or trellis because they often set a lot of fruit at once. A bush that looks neat today can become a heavy mass in just a few weeks. The trouble is, if you wait until the plant leans falls over, or the branches have already touched the ground, fixing it is no longer easy or gentle. Putting in stakes late can hurt the roots. Lifting a plant that has crawled along the ground can break branches, scrape the stem drop blossoms, or knock off young fruit. And when fruit lies on damp soil, bugs, slugs, fungal disease, and rot will come looking very quickly. Support does not only make the garden look neater, it keeps the stem standing up, lifts leaves and fruit off the ground, helps air move through the plant more easily, and helps you see problems sooner. A well-supported plant is much easier to check for pests, and disease much easier to water at the base, and much easier to harvest. The plainest way I often use is bamboo stakes. They are cheap, light, easy to find, and can be used both in the ground and in pots, especially for bush-type tomatoes. Just tie the stem with soft string firm enough so the plant does not lean, but do not pull it tight into the stem. If the plant grows more bushy or is already heavy and needs more help, use a tomato cage. But choose a sturdy, square cage, not the thin, weak, cone-shaped kind that bends and breaks easily. If you grow many plants in a row, I like the Florida weave. Set T-posts about 4 to 5 feet apart. Plant the tomatoes about 12 to 18 inches apart. Then weave string back and forth to hold the plants between each layer of string. This way is tidy and saves the trouble of tying each plant by itself. I know some of you will not agree with this, but hear me out first. First, what is a sucker? It is the small side shoot that grows right in the angle between the main stem and a leaf branch. It looks like a little new growing tip coming out from the side. If you leave it alone, that shoot can grow into a new stem, make leaves, make flowers, and make fruit. With our tomatoes, especially the indeterminate varieties grown in the greenhouse, we usually remove all the suckers starting from the bottom and working upward. The reason is very simple. The plants are grown rather close together, and there are many plants. So if we let every sucker grow, the growing area will quickly turn into a tangled mess. Branches will sprawl sideways. Fruit will hang every which way. Many branches will touch the ground, and it will be very hard to keep the plants neat in rows. I understand this is not exactly the same as a family garden. In a home garden, if you grow only a few plants, leaving a few strong suckers to make extra side stems is not wrong, especially if your growing season is short and you want to get more early fruit. But if your growing season is longer, or you want plants that are easier to manage, that do not sprawl all over the bed and do not get overloaded, then pruning suckers is very much worth doing. The more suckers you leave, the more the plant divides its strength in many directions. Yes, you may get more fruit, but often the fruit is smaller. The plant is thicker, harder to care for, and more worn out by the middle of the season. So if you want a tomato plant that is neat, strong, easy to tie up, easy to watch, and gives larger fruit for slicing, I recommend removing most of the suckers on indeterminate varieties. And do not forget to clean up the low leaves close to the base, because they mostly catch soil splashing up and bring pests and disease in to trouble the plant. So cut off all of those leaves. Just doing that will increase air flow at the base of the plant and reduce the chance of soil splashing onto the underside of the leaves during heavy rain or watering, which helps the plant stand against disease better. Keep in mind that no matter what kind of tomato you are growing, this is a very good thing to do. This is something that often happens in a family garden in June. The weather is hot. You are busy. You miss 2 or 3 days of watering, and the soil gets dry as bone. Then a heavy rain comes, or you feel bad about it and stand there watering with a hose for 20 minutes, taking the soil from bone dry to soaking wet in just 48 hours. And when you put all of that together, you have shortened the life of your tomato plant quite a bit compared with your neighbor's plant. The plant still blossoms and sets fruit, but look closely at the fruit on the plant. One fruit is nearly ripe and suddenly splits down both sides. Another fruit looks fine on top, but when you turn it over, the bottom is black and sunken. That is blossom end rot. Fruit cracking is often not a disease and not a pest either. When the soil has been dry for a long while and then suddenly gets too much water, the inside of the fruit swells faster than the outer skin can bear. Then the skin tears, and blossom end rot is tied to calcium, but many times it does not mean the soil lacks calcium. The trouble is that the plant cannot move calcium to the fruit at the right time because the water around the roots keeps going up and down unevenly. So do not water only when you remember, and then try to make up for it with a whole lot of water. Water deep and steady. Tomatoes often need about 2.5 to 5 centimeters of water each week, counting rainwater too. Water slowly at the base so the water soaks down into the root area, not just wetting the surface of the soil. A mulch around the base made from straw chopped dry leaves or wood chips will help the soil hold moisture more steadily. But do not put the mulch right up against the stem. And remember, tomatoes are not a lawn. Do not water from above and wet the whole leafy top. Water in the morning right at the base. Dry leaves, steady soil, and the plant will have far fewer cracked fruit and much less disease. Now let us talk about fertilizer. And this is where a great many tomato growers get fooled. You go out to the garden in late June, see the tomato plant standing tall with dark green leaves, thick stems, and heavy branches, and you think, "This year I have done it right." I understand that feeling. I was proud once too, looking at a tomato plant green and full like an ornamental bush. But then July comes, and the plant keeps making leaves, keeps stretching out branches while the fruit is almost nowhere to be seen. The blossoms drop. The little fruit just sits there. The plant looks very healthy, but it is not giving the thing we need most. That is the mistake of fertilizing at the wrong time. Tomatoes need nitrogen, but nitrogen mainly helps the plant grow stems, leaves, and green color. In the early stage after transplanting, that is very much needed. The plant has to take root, build its frame, and stand strong. But when the plant begins to make its first flower cluster, the goal has changed. At this point, you do not want it to keep making leaves forever. You want it to hold blossoms, set fruit, and feed the fruit. If you keep using fertilizer that is too rich in nitrogen, the plant will understand that it needs to keep growing more leaves, and then you have a tomato plant that is very pretty to look at, but not many tomatoes to eat. I will tell it plain, I do not grow tomatoes to raise a giant bush of leaves. I grow them to have fruit on the table. Too much nitrogen can also throw the plant out of balance. Blossom and rot is often tied to too little calcium in the fruit, but the soil is not always short on calcium. Many times the calcium is there, only the plant is not moving it up to the fruit in a steady way. Uneven watering is a big reason, but too much nitrogen can also make the plant grow too fast, while its ability to move calcium to the fruit cannot keep up. The way I do it is simpler. When I first plant, I use a balanced fertilizer or a complete organic fertilizer to help the plant recover and take root. You can add Job's Organics vegetable and tomato granular at planting, then feed again every 4 to 6 weeks. If you want to feed for longer, the slow release kind can provide nutrients for about 3 months. But when the plant begins to flower, I do not push nitrogen hard anymore. I switch to a tomato fertilizer with lower nitrogen, better phosphorus and potassium and calcium and trace minerals too if possible. Remember, this feeding light steady and at the right time is always better than giving one heavy feeding all at once. If the plant is unusually thick and green, but the blossoms are dropping and the fruit is few, do not be too quick to rejoice. You may not be feeding the crop. You may be feeding leaves, and those are the 5 mistakes I will never make again when growing tomatoes. By now, you have nearly watched all of today's video. I know this is a fairly long video, and there is a lot of information you may be hearing for the first time, especially if you are just starting to grow tomatoes. So write down the important parts. If there is any part you do not understand clearly, save this video and go back to the exact part you need to watch again. And if your tomato plant is having a specific problem, like blossoms dropping, fruit cracking the bottom of the fruit turning black, or a plant that is green but has little fruit, leave your question down in the comments. I am not saying that we Amish folks know everything. But I can say one thing with a grateful heart. Our community still tries to keep the learning spirit of the old folks, learning from the soil, from the seasons, from failure, and from the small things done over and over each day. If you want to know more about how we use old tips to grow a garden, keep a home, preserve food, and live with less depending on the outside, subscribe to the channel. I will see you again in the next video.